And with that, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and welcome to this session. Do we have, Ville, the slides to get started with? And my name is Pekka Abrahamsson. I'm a professor of information system and software engineering from University of Jyväskylä in Finland. It's really an honor to be. My first ICSE experience is actually dating back to 2001, where I had my first ICSE paper. And since then, I have a trouble to get into ICSE. But luckily, with this year, we were very glad to get our tutorial hands-on session to here. And I would like to start by showing who we are. So here we have a Zoom picture from a couple of days ago when we were doing a practicing session. So this is the team that you will have with you today. Well, it's me, the leader of the team, and then I have 6 PhD students with me. So we have 6 PhDs pretty much focusing on AI ethics and focusing especially in trustworthy AI development. Our research is fully funded by external sources, so we have been able to acquire industrial money for dealing with the trustworthy AI research. And our mission is to empower developers and product managers to manage ethically aligned design in practice. And when I say practice, I truly mean in the hands of the developers and product managers. And today we will continue so that Kai Christian Kemel will provide you an outline of the let's say the rationale why we have done our work, what is our aim, and then Ville Vakkuri, who will be presenting the details about the ECCOLA method that we have developed and which you will adopt in use today, and you will leave home with the actual method cards. And with these, I welcome you. We are acting as facilitators, all of us, and helping you to do the tasks that we are working in the hands-on session. So welcome on my behalf, and let's have fun. So Kai Christian, take it away.
Yep. Let me just share the presentation here. Yeah. All right. So brief introduction before we get to work. Perhaps if some of you are already familiar with AI ethics, you probably know why it would be important. But basically, this is a quick rundown on why AI ethics is important in practice. And basically, I want to make it clear that these are practical issues that actually are have something to do with the development of the systems in practice. So why AI ethics? Basically, the background is that progress on AI has been unforeseen. So some 20 years ago, we had experts, rather 30 years ago, we had experts supposing that it would take 100 years for an AI to beat the human at a game of Go. That happened in less than 30 years. So in this fashion, especially in the last 10 years, we have been breaking expectations on what AIs can do. And because of this quick pace of progress, old hypothetical future scenarios are now becoming reality. So scenarios that were hypothetical some mere 20 years ago are now actually practical issues out in the field. So various AI ethical issues such as whether that self-driving car should hit the pedestrian or save the driver. And why are AI systems different? This is also an important thing in AI ethics, because with normal systems, if you don't like a system, you can just not use the system. Sometimes this choice is not so clear. Your employer might force you to use the system, basically. So, but with AI systems, you really cannot opt out a lot of the time, because these systems, because you are not the user in these systems. The average consumer is more of an object for data collection. The user of an AI system is often a company. So as an individual, you are typically just a source of data. And it can be really hard to avoid this. So you go to a website, an AI collects data from you. You walk outside, an AI might collect data from you through a surveillance camera. Of course, these are very controversial issues, the surveillance cameras, for example. These are currently being discussed in relation to legislation globally, but currently it is in some places possible. And then, of course, AI is already being used in high-stakes decision-making. So we have AI systems being used in criminal justice and medicine to make decisions that affect real people. So, of course, it can be argued that humans also make mistakes, but with AI systems, when humans make mistakes, they also affect the system. So there's both the humans making the mistakes and then the system making the mistakes later. And then one key thing is that ultimately, when it comes to why AI ethics is important, is that ultimately many AI ethics issues can also be seen as software quality issues. So this is really close to what is already being done out on the field. It's just a new point of view to this. And what is AI ethics in practice? Rather than abstract issues, it is really the practical issues. Data privacy issues. It's not unique to AI ethics, but it's certainly something that we deal with in AI ethics. AI systems use vast amounts of data because for now, machine learning needs vast amounts of data. We are making progress on teaching AIs using smaller sources of data, but for now, data is really important in AI systems. And when you use lots of data, you inevitably run into data privacy issues. Who is this data from? Where is this data from? Do the people know that you are using this data? And to this end, we already have a lot of public discussion on privacy issues in online services. And many of these systems are AI systems. Then, for example, we have black box systems. This is a typical issue with transparency. So we see the input, we see the situation the system makes a decision in, and then we see what the decision was. But in AI systems, it can be really difficult to explain what happened between the input and output. So the systems are essentially black boxes. We see what goes in, but we don't see what happens in the system. And this transparency issue is a very typical AI ethics issue that, for example, ECCOLA aims to address in some way. And then explanation models that are used to provide explanations for these actions. So even if you look into the system, it can be really complex. And sometimes we use explanation models that didn't really fully manage to tackle what is going on, but they still provide some kind of explanation, and these can be lacking as well. Liability questions. Then very practical issues. When something does inevitably go wrong, who is responsible and who pays? So is it the company that manufactured the system? Is it the single developer? This is questions need to be considered when we have AI systems causing damage out on the field, and not just physical damage, but also immaterial damage in the digital space. And then, of course, we have a question of a biased AI. So when we have an AI system making decisions in criminal justice, is it biased in some way? Is it profiling people based on characteristics? And then this is slide changing for you. Oh, there we go. Okay. And then why should you care? If you are working in a company, this perhaps better question is, why should a company care? So of course, ethically speaking, we as consumers and we as people care, but why would companies care? Failures can be costly. So you already have, for example, we have the case where our national broadcasting company, it commissioned an AI system for moderating its content, rather like for a forum discussion. And then because they commissioned the AI, they could fire some people. They could save some costs with the new system. But what happened is that people were already fired, and then they noticed that the system was really not working as well as it should have been working in practice. So they had already changed their internal processes. They already had commissioned the system, but it wasn't working. So they had to decommission the system, and they had to hire the people back. Of course, this was not cheap. It was really not a very good endeavor for them. And then you have legal issues. So on the note of the privacy issues earlier, we have like globally governments and supranational organizations already drafting regulations and law related to AI ethics. So, for example, the GDPR, everyone now knows it. It was a really big thing some years ago when people were baffled by every single online service giving you the new terms of services and how they deal with GDPR. Then you have the idea of a right to explanation. So basically, we are now considering on a legal level, like how accurately should companies be able to explain why the systems do what they do. So people have the right to explanation when the AI system does something. So you have to legally be able to explain things. And by tackling AI ethics, you can also tackle this. And the laws are typically slow to move. Regulations are typically slow to move, but they're already out there and already coming. So there's always more to come. It's better to start tackling these issues early on in development than to have to tackle them later on, if in some years there are more regulations already. So even if you don't have to adhere to the right level explanation fully yet, chances are you will have to do so soon. And to that end, ethics can also be a selling point right now. So it is a global ethical megatrend, among others. You have people, the average consumer is right now far more environmentally conscious, and to that end, people are also far more aware of data issues, the data privacy issues. So people are far more conscious of what companies do with their data. By showing that you are aware of GDPR, it can be a selling point for you that you handle their data ethically. So, and then of course, but how do you become ethical in practice? Now, this is an ongoing challenge in the area. This is actually why we're here today. So currently, guidelines are the standard way. AI ethics has been distilled, the academic discussion on AI ethics has been distilled into principles. So we have principles such as the transparency I mentioned earlier, which are central in AI ethics. And then we have various guidelines that then show these principles in a way that is supposed to make them practical. Some examples are the IEEE ethically aligned design. This is a huge set of guidelines based on academic research, lots of people involved. We have also governments already drafting these. The EU, as a supranational organization, proposed its own guidelines for trustworthy AI. Then we have big companies like Google with their own guidelines. There's hundreds of these. We have papers reviewing them already. But ultimately, we have the issue that they don't necessarily work because you have guidelines, okay, but what do you do with the guidelines? How do you get the principles and how do you put them into the system? So we have past papers showing that, for example, more generic guidelines for ethics in software development haven't really changed the way software developers work. And it's starting to seem that this might also be the case in AI ethics. So developers have a hard time actually putting these guidelines into practice. And we thought that we should try to speak the language of the developers to make AI ethics more practical. Software companies work using methods, so perhaps we could devise a method for AI ethics. And here we are today to present to you our endeavor on an AI ethics method.
Thank you, Kai Christian. Okay, so how to take it practical? So what we are working here today and what we are presenting here is ECCOLA. So it's a academic proven and industry tested model or framework for addressing ethical issues in development. And in here you can see it is presented in a visioning card way that is already taking something from the practice. So we know that some software practices are learned to this kind of envisioning cards. So we will try to tap into that way of working to address these ethical issues. So what we basically try to do with ECCOLA is to change the good and ongoing discussion around principles to practice and practices that is happening in software development. There are many ways to improve and address issues in development, and many of the discussion has been really on the conceptual tools and mental models. So the current research has been really heavily on focusing, for example, principles, as Kai Christian just mentioned. But what we are aiming in this research, the entry point for having ethical consideration affecting actual development of the software products would be the operational tools, for example, models and frameworks, giving practices, the ways to how the things to be done. And here this is what we are addressing with ECCOLA. So what is ECCOLA? So ECCOLA is based on action research. It has been developed in I would say since 2018. We iteratively testing it, also really giving new releases, having these kind of workshops with academics and practitioners to have feedback and refine the base. As an academic basis for this, we have multiple AI ethics papers addressing what is at this moment done in the field with these guidelines, or is anything done at all. For example, we have one survey over 200 companies addressing the asking the questions how ethics is considered, or is it considered at all. Already mentioned quite dominant guidelines from this field, the EU Trustworthy AI and IEEE Ethical and Design are the major documents behind that we have been taking influence and inspiration for the method. And it has been already, I would say, communicated in the academic community. In practice, what is ECCOLA? It's a sprint by sprint evolving tool to empower, like draw up to ethical thinking, but gradually with small steps. And by that, we will be producing a paper trail. So many of the decisions that already address these ethical issues, they're happening in development team, but nobody is documenting these, because these are many of the discussions that happens in the coffee breaks, for example, when the developers say this could be something alarming for me, but there is no practices to address these questions inside the development cycles. And for example, with this paper trail or work product sheet as written here, we could address then something as I would say also vague as ethics. So if you have a paper trail on how you have considered ethics, for example, through ECCOLA, answering a couple of questions, and then drawing out what the team has been discussing, for example, with customer, then you could have a paper trail, for example, giving answers. So why was what done? What was selected in behalf of other things? And also, we really come from Agile, so we believe that it's not a waterfall-like process, but it's done as sprints and doing reviews. So it's evolving deck or set of cards. So sometimes you need many cards, sometimes you can access just a small amount of cards. And for example, when testing with companies, you often give them a lot of freedom on selecting and finding really the good way to, I would say, implement this to their way of working. What ECCOLA tries to do, one practical example is to take through these cards or this way of working, to take the AI ethics principles and transfer them into features and user stories, something that the developers already know. So we are using the existing vocabulary of the developers and developing teams to implement ethical consideration in the product, I would say, product itself. And this is something also that we are really doing the hands-on session on. You can find ECCOLA to this short link, and it will be posted in the chat during this session. And in ECCOLA, we have 8 teams and 22 plus 1 cards in total. And each of these teams, they are addressing many of the key, I would say, topics in AI ethics or in ethical consideration in software engineering. And for example, we have analyze, transparency, safety and security, fairness, data, agency oversight, well-being, and accountability. And each of these are color-coded so that you can easily sort them out and see which one you're working with. Each of these cards are structured in the following way. You have a card team also represented with a same color on each card. You have a number to keep track and make it easy to document what you are addressing. You have a card title, something to give you some kind of heads on what will be the card talking about. Then we have a motivation, because we have been developing this with practitioner in practice. So we want to have a really practical short motivation. Why is you consider this one? Then we have questions, what to consider. And then we have, if it's not really at that point open to you why this is a topic that you should consider, we have always a practical example. Sometimes they might sound a bit funny or silly, but the idea is just to activate your own thinking about that. And we have also given numbers here so you can easily reference, for example, card number 2, question 5. This is one example how ECCOLA could run in development. So you have all the 21 cards. You select for some iteration. For example, here they have selected seven cards. Then you view and take actions during the actual programming. You document in work product sheet what kind of actions you have taken, maybe produce a user story. And after that, you can have a review, like where the actions planned really done during that session. Should we address something again? And for example, this is not relevant for us at this moment, and these themes we should select on next iteration. And this could be also that something that the developing team is talking with the customer or the product manager, so they can have a common vocabulary how to address these ethical issues. Use cases for ECCOLA is really it helps you to perform ethical aligned design in practice. We have had evidence from non-functional user stories, so taking these really, I would say, abstract concepts, for example, transparency or accountability, and really building something tangible like user stories that the developers already know of, how their things are represented these. For product owners, it helps them to refine the backlog. For example, with customer, they can have a conversation about, okay, these are the themes that you selected important, and these are the user stories that we have been talking on with the team. Also, we know that this kind of way of working, just representing with these 8 themes and 21 cards, we can raise the awareness. So for example, if you're doing software acquisition, you could be asking the right questions. And also in overall evaluation of how ethically aligned the system is, or is there a documentation about that? But this is something that we will be taking our hands-on session today. So first we look at some practicalities, but then we start selecting the themes, cards, and then we start to do some hypothetical developing together. Okay, let's move to our second platform. Can you see my screen? This Flinga board will be our main, I would say, base for this session. So you can find the timeline here on the left side, the actual assignment that we will be working on, just some help and aid, and then we have some playroom to practice with the board. From the participants, Joni will be taking care of the timekeeping and also will be the lobby master. So if you ever get lost or you know where to be, Joni will be helping you. Overall in timeline, we are now at the practicalities session, and after that we will start with the card selection. We have also prepared one break here that Joni will be announcing when we will go into that break. During this workshop, we will be using this Flinga platform that I'm already showing here, but also SurveyMonkey to select the cards that we will be working on. Some couple of etiquette things. We will be also working in breakout rooms. And in these breakout rooms, is idea is to facilitate discussion around the selected cards, ECCOLA cards. And it's really a discussion, not a monologue. So try to gather ideas from all the participants, be active so you can be most beneficial for the team in overall. You can also participate by talking and also by writing on the Flinga board. And as mentioned, Joni is there for you if you get lost. Just return to the main room and Joni will find you a nice place. Okay, how does Flinga work? Basically, it's a way to address or add material to the whiteboard by this up corner here. So you select the color, how you want to add or interact with the board, and then you can message. Now we could start with this exercise here. So Joni, if you could post the link to this board on the chat, and everybody could try to find out this corner on the Flinga board. And the idea would be to post your working location on this compass, taking if the actual location of the conference would be the Origo, where we would be going on. And now Joni has sent the link. So let's start adding. So just type in, for example, my location is Oulu, Finland. So I would just tap it in there, maybe put it like this. So yeah. And just let's get to know the tool. Okay, we have USA represented also. Virginia also, Jyväskylä. And if you have problems getting onto this board, you can just voice out together here. We will guide you to this right direction. We have Netherlands also, Italy. Did everybody made it? Okay. So then there's the next one, the playroom. So if you scroll down, the next assignment to get to know with the Flinga is to post your job title to the right, I would say, person here. For example, I would be a researcher, and there what my current job title would be. Okay, we have some text moving all around. Okay. Now let's get to the actual assignment. So you will be taking part in hypothetical simulated development of elderly care app. And because the population is getting older, we need to have more solutions supporting people living by their own in smart homes. And with that purpose, a company is developing an app to monitor elderly people in that way to support their stay alone at home, for example, reporting from injuries, and other feature would be bonus. And the customer is asking, for example, smartphone-based applications. It could be running on the most common IO operating systems, some kind of user profiles and what kind of data there would be, and also to way to support professional healthcare professionals, for example, if something happens. And the targeted audience for this kind of app would be, for example, children looking after their elderly parents. Does anyone want to ask about the actual use case that we have here? And now we have gone through the practicalities. We can start with the ECCOLA team selection in SurveyMonkey. So, Kai Christian.
Yep. So we wanted to give you the chance to select the cards. There are no right or wrong answers here, and there will be no right or wrong answers in the breakout rooms either. So just select the cards you think are interesting. So we will use the SurveyMonkey platform to do this. So you can vote in a really brief survey of 2 questions. And you can select the cards through this, and then we ultimately select the ones with the most votes. So the survey is, well, you already pasted it. So I can share the screen to show you this. Basically, when you click the link, it should bring you to a site like this. And then you simply can repeat here what we just did. And then you get to choose 3 themes from the ECCOLA card. So there's 8 in total. And then you just select the 3 that interest you the most. First, you have the theme without the cursive. So for example, analyze. And then in cursive, it shows the cards that are under that theme. So for example, transparency is a big theme. Later on, we filter these cards down a bit, so you get to, after deciding on the themes, we get to look at the cards more closely. So for now, simply pick 3 themes from here.
Joni can keep the track of how many people have responded so that we know that when we are done, so we don't have to wait on if everybody's already.
Yeah, I actually saw that Kai Christian is on it already as well. So yeah, we will keep 4 eyes on it. So far, there are 12 responses.
I think that might be everyone who wants to answer. I don't think I should answer, for example. So is anyone still working on the survey who wants to answer?
No, it's 13. So someone was working on it. Yeah. We're good.
Well, it would seem that we have a top 3 here that will not change anymore.
Can you share the
Yes.
outcome? So this vote who will win the Eurovision Song Contest?
Yeah. So here we have transparency, data, and safety and security as the top 3.
And human agency and oversight was not selected by anyone. Okay, good. So we have the top 3. Let's go forward.
Yeah. And meanwhile, we work to prepare the Flinga boards for a few minutes, so we can pass the time by looking at the ECCOLA board to see what we actually selected here.
actually we'll get to the Flinga board in a while, but first, this is the point where we could have the quick bio break if someone needs, and then soon there will be another SurveyMonkey coming up before we get to the actual Flinga board. So basically what's going to happen now is that you will be divided into the breakout rooms in a moment, and then you can discuss together on these themes, like what are the most important cards, and you can select those in the teams, in the groups, and then those cards will be used at the actual Flinga board. So yeah.
So would you say that we can take a 5-minute break now?
Yeah, we can take a 5-minute break at this point, and we'll be back at, what's the local time now?
2013.
Yeah, so we'll be back at 2018. See you in a bit.
All right. 18 after hour. See you then.
Thanks.
If you are trying to talk to us, you are muted.
Thank you. Yeah. So as a group, you will be starting to select the cards, what card we will be working on today, or cards. And by that, we will be working so that Joni will post a link to the chat on the next survey. And after that, Joni will divide us into 3 rooms where we can have a really short introduction, who we are. And then we can start by looking on the survey, discussing which kind of card would fit to this theme of elderly care app. Any questions about this or practicalities? And after this group work, we will return to this main lobby. In here, we will have instruction for the next iteration, and then we will start actually writing, commenting, and after that producing user stories.
So each group will select out of the many cards that are there. They will select 4
cards for this iteration to keep it working on. And the survey itself is built in that way that you cannot select more than 4, and you cannot select less than 4. So it will guide you also. You can have a group discussion, but you can fill the form individually. Okay.
So I can disagree with the others secretly.
Yeah. And before we go to the rooms, please take the survey link open. You can find it on chat now. Okay, we have at least one ready. I'm also. Have everybody clicked the link on the chat to open the survey? Okay, I'm seeing notes here. So Joni, please open the rooms.
All right, I'll open the rooms and give you status times, like how much time you have left for the discussion, and it will be open for 10 minutes and will automatically close, and you'll be transferred back here into this main room. So see you in 10.
Okay. So let's have a short round who we are, at least something that we can get to know each other, that we can work on this group. And then let's go to the discussion about the card. Which card should we select from the survey? And I can open up the survey app so we can get it also for the recording, so they can see what we are working on. And as I already started talking, my name is Ville Vakkuri. I'm a BSc student from University of Jyväskylä, working on the title called How to Implement Ethical Considerations in Software Development, especially in AI systems.
Okay, I'll go next, if that's okay. I'm Mamir, and I'll be joining the PhD. I'll be starting my PhD study here at the University of Jyväskylä in August or September. And it will still be on the AI ethics as well. And I'm here as a participant today.
I can go next. My name is Grace Lewis. I'm a software engineering researcher at the Software Engineering Institute in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA. And in addition to chairing today's session, I'm also participating in the event today.
I'm Rory. I'm a first-year PhD student and kind of just here to get ideas on how to implement things in the future, I guess.
My name is Xiaofeng Wang. I'm from Free University of Bolzano in Italy. I'm a researcher, software engineering researcher as well. Yeah, and just let you know, I actually know Willy personally, so we met before So I knew something about his PhD work. Yeah.
But that's enough about me. Let's get to the actual work. So I will open the. So can you see my screen? So we are here with transparency. We are given with 6 cards. With data, we have 3 cards, and with systems safety and security, we have 2 cards to select from. So I will give you some time to read the cards and card descriptions. So we have a short motivation on each card.
I'm going to leave the Zoom real quick and see if I can get my camera working.
Okay, we have used half of the time for this card selection. So any thoughts, ideas, comments, something that really got your notice on? There are a lot of important questions as always.
Are you talking about the methodology or about our choices in the exercise?
On the choices on the exercise.
Okay, I can start. So you one of the things that was mentioned earlier is that the app would be like for me to watch my parents. So so for me, the number one would be explainability, transparency, because I would want to know like what really happened to my parents. Are they really in danger? So I can figure out what to do.
So one thought I had on that one specifically was that 2 and 3, if you're looking at either 2 or 3, you kind of need to look at them together, because actually communicating that to the user is a critical part, as well as being able to say what it is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm also happy with the card number 3. Yeah. Any others?
2 of them from the data point of view that seemed significant to me were 7 and 9.
Yeah. For me, 7 at least.
Okay, 7 is getting some.
Yeah. I have a quick question here, because when I read the motivation, it speaks to developers, right? When we think about this set of issues, what hat do we, how to say, where are we thinking from developer perspective.
Yeah, we are
or
taking
the
developer's perspective in this exercise.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
Well, I think what we said still holds though, because as a developer, I think that I would assume that those things are very important for the people that are going to be the users of my app.
And at
Another
least they
one.
would be the one challenging your selections also. Roy said something, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, I was going to say another one that's kind of linked with number 2 and the explainability is number 6. And that's the reliability of the explainability, basically.
Let's see, we have still 2 minutes to discuss. How about the safety and security? Anything from there?
I would say security. 12, guess. Yeah, 12.
Yeah, I actually selected 13 because again, it's I was thinking of elderly safety if something happens.
So would our concern in the system for security be like a denial of service of shutting down the system and have someone be hurt, or the exfiltration of data?
I
And
would
what
say
data are we
likely
actually collecting
scenarios
for this?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So do we have an answer for Roy's question or?
Probably infiltration of data may come to mind more readily.
Okay, do you have the link still in your hand? And because we are doing this also as an individual effort, so now we have had the discussion, so then you can post, use your own thoughts in your survey so we can see the end result of the whole group. I will stop the share now and also upload my own selections. And of course, if you lost the link, it's also in the chat now. Okay, how was it?
Fantastic.
So you were caught off guard in the middle of sentence. Jump back to the main lobby.
Yeah.
Hi, Roger. Good to see you, man.
It's good to see you too. I like your kids, by the way. I have to go and visit them at some point.
Excellent.
Do we have the results?
Yes. Again, the jury has decided. Where are the results? Who is keeping them?
Yeah, let me dig up the.
I think
Or
the
do you want
Finnish
to do it
band
in-
was the best one in a competition on Saturday, by the way.
Right, I can share the screen and show you the results. And here they are. So privacy and 7 is the leading one. And then it's easy actually. Number 2, 6, 7, and 12.
2,
All right.
6, 7, and 12.
Now you can leave this here. We can talk about this because I know that you are now making the adjustments to the Flinga board, right? So we can now look at this and wonder why we don't like documenting trade-offs. So it's the only one that didn't receive any. So we don't like to leave the trace, motivation, documentation of trade-offs. Whether you make a decision, you can choose one option over one other alternatives. Perhaps or those issues perhaps come a bit later, but in the beginning, I don't know. You are making a lot of trade-offs, trying to balance. Does this raise any comments from the that are? I mean, I think that the votes are pretty distributed. I would say that we had out of the few cards that we had, and we had 3 teams working on this, we pretty much focused on all aspects.
I think specifically on the documentation one, I didn't select it because in order to document these trade-offs, you actually have to understand what the trade-offs are first, and most of the other ones are about understanding them.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Also, from a process perspective, one thing that one of the people in our breakout room mentioned is that we really have to think about this from the developer perspective, as opposed to from the user, like the end user of the app or the person that is going to use the app. And so I think maybe a lot of us were taking more of the user perspective rather than the developer perspective, and that's perhaps why that could have not been mentioned.
I think that's a nice point that you make, Grace, because I mean, of course, should we have the stakeholder kind of a viewpoint, we would have noticed that we have these different roles in the project. And then depending on the, let's say, viewpoint we take, different views are raised. And I think that's one of the, so that we should understand from multiple different perspectives. And I guess that's the discussion that will help us to understand where to focus. But now that the cards will be on the Flinga board, and we can then focus more deeply into each of these cards. So how does it now proceed?
Can I make a quick comment here?
Yes.
Yeah, because when you present this, you presented this will be used as user story, right? So it's a kind of non-functional user story. And from Agile perspective, user story actually should be written in a kind of business language that's understandable by users. So in a sense, when you call it user story, it implies somehow a user perspective, customer perspective rather than developer perspective. But the motivation when we worked in the group, when we read the motivations, they read more from developer perspective. So that's why I felt a little bit difficult to work on this set of, let's say, non-functional requirements to decide which is more important, if I'm not clear with the perspective.
That's a good point that you are making, and I was wondering whether others had the same feeling that talking about the user stories is actually perhaps confusing here rather than helping. Because at the end of the day, the idea is that this leads to, so that when we have done processing the, let's say, the 4 cards that we identified, then we would be actually write some user stories. We would, and now user stories should be written with somebody who understands, let's say, the domain, and that's something that we can discuss whether we are actually able to write those user stories, either whether they are functional or non-functional.
Okay, I'm ready to take us to the Flinga board to discuss.
Can I ask one more question? No?
Yeah, of course we have.
So this is the job of the product owner in some sense. If you look at as a Scrum activity.
Yeah, if you're looking at in a Scrum.
Yeah.
Cycle, yeah.
Then it will be like the product owner who will have this consideration together with the customer. And then in a sprint meeting at the beginning of the Scrum, then they will pick certain element into that sprint container. And it could be some ethical thing or not.
Yeah, for example, we have companies have been reporting for that. They have been like selecting with the customer, like, okay, which card we are taking for this iteration. And from this iteration, they have, okay, I understand. So a customer is communicating by that, this is important for me.
Yes.
So transfer it all to the product.
Yeah.
in that way.
I sort of ask one more question though, because when it comes to features, it's very easy to pick one thing. But can you do the same with ethics? Can you picking like one thing or two things? I mean, like you either consider ethics as a whole thing or not at all in some sense, as like with security. Either you having a security leakage or not. But
Yeah, I think for this kind of like abstracting, it's also like do with if you want to find some negative result, it's a example of the system leaking. So of course it's an easy way to show it. But let's see what we can
yeah, thank you.
work on the Flinga board. So I will be showing an example here, and then we will be going back to rooms to discuss. Okay, so I have created this Flinga board for us. Now we have the 4 top cards selected here. You can move them around. And then we have the etiquette reminder here. And of course, reminder for Joni, if you get lost, Joni will save you. And then I have the assignment here as a reminder also. So we will be looking at the case to the selected cards. And we are designing or developing the system with these iterations. And we will be doing this by that we are documenting a discussion in the Flinga board. Everyone in the room is free to write their own thoughts and ideas, and we will be working in 3 15-minute iterations, 2 with cards, 1 with user story. And of course, Joni will remind us kindly also with the timekeeping. And there is also what to do section in each of iterations. So we have iteration 1 here, iteration 2, and then we have iteration 4. And just on the table of the product owner, we are returning on the first iteration, and the customers are giving some requirements, and we need to narrow down what we will be actually starting to do. And we will select 2 of the cards by your discussion. You can discuss in a group which of these 2 you select. You can select them, for example, here, and then you have 15 minutes time to discuss on these questions that the cards raises. Best practice that we have found out is that everyone first looks on the cards. For example, I would be taking the first question and the second one would take the second question, and first asking by themselves, is there something that this question raises from me or raises in my thoughts? And then communicating that to the Flinga board. And after we have had some kind of answer for all the questions, then we open the discussion. Okay. And for the last iteration, we will be focusing on user stories, and there are 2 examples that we can work on. Okay. Any questions about the first iteration?
Let's have the fingerboards.
Yes. So we are ready for the rooms, Joni.
All
Did we
right.
get a link to the new board?
Yeah, the link will be shared in your room. So we will be working on 3 different rooms as 3 different boards.
Yeah, and now the timer will be set 45 minutes, so 3 iterations, one after the other, and I'll give you heads up when to change the iteration and move on, how much time you have left.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Let's
See
have
you
fun.
guys. Have fun. Enjoy.
Okay. And I have the link in the chat now. So the first thing to do is to look at the cards, what actually we have on the table, and then select which ones we will be working on the first iteration and which 2 in the next iteration. And And I will be sharing the screen again so we can get it also for the recording. Or let's put it like this, we can. So we will be working on all of these, so just which ones to start with.
I think you might be on a different board, or else it's not synchronizing, because mine did not reflect the changes you just made.
Thank you.
Now they're moving.
Yeah.
So right now we're just basically discussing which two we
Yeah.
want to pick, right?
So the discussion is open for.
I know. I think I would like to discuss explainability. To me, this is a big one.
Yeah, I agree. I think for this kind of, I think it does the app provide medical advices and things like that, right? So then
Yeah, that's
I
what we
think,
talked about the first time too.
yeah. So I think explainability is the probably, I see it has high priority among the four.
Yeah, I actually like Rory's ranking.
Ah, okay, here. Yep.
I guess one question I have to ask in ranking them too, I don't know how much it actually changes it, but are we looking at what questions we need to ask to have a reliable system, or what questions we need to ask to actually bring the system like into the market and have the final product?
Was that a question for
Repeat
Vila?
the question.
Okay.
So in ranking the priority of these, we can have a question about how do we get the system moving in the first place? How do we actually see if we can make something functional?
Yeah.
And then after you have that and actually have something that you know is viable, then you need to figure out how to actually make it something.
Basically what we need for the
market.
MVP. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So Roy has given us an order. Do we agree? 2, 7, 6, 12.
If we use this MVP concept, then I would argue which is more important, reliability or privacy, because as a first iteration, probably the reliable and explainability. So these two related, they are actually more important. Then I consider if it's right. I want to get the right advice first, and then I will think about the privacy issue, because the right advice is the more safety critical, matter more to the life of the elderly people.
Interesting, because I was thinking at it from a completely different perspective, and I think this is why I like this exercise, because for me privacy and data comes next, because I mean if this is I'm assuming that we're doing this because this is an AI system, right? And so for training, right, I can use very generic data for training, right? And get somewhere. But then eventually I'm going to use personal data as well, to make the model more accurate, right? Especially if I'm using like an active learning technique. So for me, it would be interesting to understand how much personal data, for example, would I need in addition to very generic data. So again, I see your point of view as well, but it's interesting because I was thinking at it from a different point of view completely.
Yeah, no, but you have a good point, because my argument actually is not specific to AI system. Maybe it's applicable to anything, but when you consider AI, maybe you have to probably shift the perspective. So yeah.
Okay, we are midpoint of this this part of the first iteration. So let's put we don't know anything about AI yet. So the customer haven't asked anything. And what we know that they want to have some kind of tracking or and supporting in that way. There might be AI components, but the customer haven't been asking those. So let's just take a couple of these and let's see how far we can get. So
I assume we're doing 2 first. How should we split up the questions then?
Are we okay with the Roy's order?
I think I like 6 after 2.
So these would go here.
Yeah.
So could we take this one? This was at least has been on the discussion. And which one of these?
I think 6 has more support right now.
Could we go with this?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now we have still time to discuss. So let's look at the card number 2. And maybe we could start Grace taking the first one, Xau taking the second one, I can take the third one, then Roy would have the fourth one, and then Mamia would have the fifth one, and then we can look at the 6 ones together. And if you're out of ideas, then just jump to the next one.
Just to clarify, you want me to write something next to number 2?
Yes, please.
Got it.
Then Winnie, which one should I look at? Question number?
Take the 3.
3. Okay.
Okay, I'm confused. Am I doing 2?
Yeah, everybody, let's take a part in discussing on this board. So
okay, got it.
Yes. I'm just showing for the recording, otherwise we will lose the whole.
I think this is a general question that might help too. Are we talking about like designing purely an app? Are we talking about designing hardware to go with an app, or are we talking about
the customers say that sensors are okay, but
like existing sensors, but not
yeah,
ones we're developing.
Yeah,
okay.
But they're basically given us what we could be used for tracking. Okay, now we have, if someone is still typing, we can have a discussion here. So is explainability goal of the system? I think we had this discussion already when selecting the cards. So I think, yes, we want to have the system explainable for the users, and especially like if we look at the elderly people as end user, then we can look the people taking care of them as a user of this system. So we want them to have a understanding to the system and explainable in that way also, building the trust to the system. For example, why there was an alarm. Maybe. And how we want to, I would say, proceed with the explainability could be that we have a system, a two-way plan, including the system, how to make the system explainable. And especially for this, if we want to have the people trusting the system, we could have how to make the user experience or the use of this system explainable, understanding why things are happening from the user point of view. Okay. Those were my ideas for the first one.
Yeah, I agree. It's about explaining why the model reached a certain decision or inference. You know, if it's a decision tree, I went through this path, or if it's layered. I mean, that these are the and also producing it in a human readable form, of course, which is always a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on the second, third, fourth, fifth? For the sixth one, I put that we need to use third-party component, especially if you're getting some kind of sensor data. For example, if we would be using the mobile phone of the elderly. Do you want to comment any of these that you have been writing here about the dating training or explainability? Okay, we are already lagging behind, so let's see what we can work on the system reliability. So there are 5 of us, and I would like to opt out myself from this one, so you can focus on maybe Grace, number 1, Sao, second one, Roy, third one, and Mamia, fourth one.
Okay, I finally understood what you wanted us to do. Got it.
Yeah, it takes time. Yeah.
Maybe can I ask then, in this case, in terms of question 2, what answer would you expect? Because I think it's a formative answer. Affirmative answer, yes, of course. Should consider,
Maybe our answer would be in just starting with this at not yet. Or would it be an okay one? Would you accept that kind of answer?
Okay.
Of course, it's hard when we are taking this hypothetical scenario. So what is the
Right.
timeline? And when are we designing and when are we actually developing? I think in this kind of setting, these are happening at the same simultaneously. So maybe would our answer be yes? Of course, we will be doing that, but how and when would be the
Right. Yeah. Thanks.
How about others? Would you like to elaborate on your comments?
So on mine, it's do we need to be able to replicate the failure? And this is kind of going to be a cost trade-off. The more false positives we have, the less we're going to make from the product. But the ones that are going to actually kill the product itself is if there are false negatives, someone had an emergency and we didn't report on it. So I think
like one could be too much.
Yes. So we need to figure out what the false negatives are, but I don't think we actually always need to figure out what all of the failures are, just the false negatives.
I wrote down that letting them know what the system is capable of, because that's number 4. How do you assure the end users of the system's reliability? So basically, my thinking is that for you to have any sense of reliability in a system, you have to know what it is capable of doing versus what it is incapable of doing. So having that basic knowledge would give you an idea of how reliable it is.
Okay, so we are already eating time from the second iteration, so let's go there. So sometimes go by and after meeting with the customer, the product owner wants to include new features. So the app should be able to track the users at their home and have some kind of log file what happens. And maybe the customer has machine learning could be a solution for this. So we could, for example, have some behavioral learning, patterns recognition. So that may lead to accidents. The system should report any potential hazardous behavior. For example, some anomalies are happening, so the people could address these issues. And of course, maybe one could be to recognize hazardous high-risk individuals, so they could, for example, put some more resources on those. And now we have the cards 12 and 7 to work on. And of course, if you have time, we can go back to the previous ones.
Did we take the same numbers from the last one?
Yeah, so the numbers were Grace 1,
Okay.
Xiao 2, was it Roy 3 and Mamiya 4?
Okay.
And some of these might need you to use more imagination in this hypothetical context.
The service is specifically for when they're in the home, right?
Yeah, that was the customer defined context. So supporting staying alone at home. So maybe we can put the context there to remind us. how does the home affect the security risk?
I'm actually having a hard time coming up with mine what an unexpected situation is. The only thing I can think of are things like fires and that, but that wouldn't be under the purview of the app.
Yeah, for the data pollution, there could be, for example, how the hardware is handling this situation. For if there's a caretaker there, or a nurse is coming, for example, how would that affect the sensory data? For example, all grandchildren visiting, maybe that could be also leading. For example, if the system would be registering kids, they might be really abnormal movement around the house.
Okay, so basically, like probably vulnerabilities brought by people visiting the house rather than, the elderly.
Or if these kind of things are not mitigated by how the sensors are used. Yeah. And the time is really running out for us, so we should already maybe really focus on this one, or then look at the data card. How do you see which one would be the better for us?
I think, how many minutes do we have left?
So we have 19 minutes to go, and we still have at least 10 minutes we would like to use for the last iteration.
Okay. I don't know, can we do the data one really quick?
No, we can also always return.
Okay.
So now I'm also on board. We have 5 questions, so I can take the last one. So the same numbers, and then we can start discussing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how did these questions sound like?
This
I
is
think-
more concrete to me to think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
I haven't been able to come up with a good answer for number 4 yet.
Maybe whoever wrote this one here up here is like aiding you that way.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. As you can see, there are elements of like checklist also here, things to be done, but also they're more like open questions that have you what to consider.
Specifically for my question, it's suggesting like asking for consent or ability to revoke it, and I think the system requires this to operate, requires all like the sensor information and the medical records. So the consent is them using the service, and I don't think the system will really work without any of that.
But one possible pitfall might be that who is actually like endorsing this system? Is it the children or caretakers who want to have like their own, I would say, freedom or flexibility to this system, or is it actual maybe not even end users, but whoever are the elderly people who are used by this system? So how to communicate in these two levels? And especially if there is some kind of like problem with understanding and memory also involved. So we have now 15 minutes for this whole iteration process left, and we have the user stories. But before we go to user stories, could we look at the whole iteration, the iteration as a whole? Was there something that when we added these AI capabilities for machine learning here, could we add something here? Was something missing from the previous iteration? Or what is the overall picture of our system at this moment?
I don't know. I think we have enough information to start writing user stories, I think.
Yeah, but let's take it slow because it might be a new concept for some of us, and we can find a way to work it together. So there are two examples given here. So in this template that we are reporting user stories, we already have some kind of name for the story. Then you have a description as want to, so that I can, and some kind of like requirements for us to when we can consider this story would be finished. So we have the first one is worried. So there's a caretaker who wants to monitor parents from distance so that I know that they are safe, even though I'm not with them at all time. And for example, what could be required for this? We need to have the remote monitoring working and some kind of mobile connection. And then the other hand is the end user. So I want to be aware of my medical data and history is kept saved. So my privacy is not misused by this app. And what could be considered done? For example, we have a data policy written, agreed, and communicated. But these were just examples without knowing what we have been discussing. So who would be the type of user that we could be taking a viewpoint from?
Are you looking for a different user?
We can come up with anyone. We can also
Okay.
take this one, like copy this one here.
Yeah.
Or what was in your mind?
No, because the one I had in mind was a little bit similar to the caretaker one. Yes, I want to make sure I can monitor my parents from a distance, but I also want to make sure that I get the right information so that I'm not, for example, wasting time. Well, not wasting time. That sounds horrible, but it's your parent. But going to visit and it's nothing. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
the whole explainability part.
Could you add it there? It's more like negative, so that I don't need to, more that I can. But so that I can be comfortable with the data that I'm getting from the system.
Or that I can, yeah, so I can better determine what the urgency is or something like that.
Yeah. So with the case given by Grace, could we come up with some measurement for this as a group? How could we measure or make it some kind of trackable when the requirement would be filled?
So I think the way I would write it, so it would be something like, as a caretaker or daughter, I want to receive accurate and understandable information regarding my parents' conditions so that I can decide the correct action that needs to be taken.
How does that sound for others?
I have to remember what I said.
Yeah, I tried to type it, but I lost half of it.
I can try.
I just wanted to find out, because sometimes it's hard to tell what is like considered accurate, because it might be like on the elderly person's part, it might be important, but on your part, you may not see it as that important. So how do you strike a balance there?
Yeah, maybe we could have a measurement of accurate for there also in the when considered done. We need to have some kind of tools to measure this.
Yeah.
Could you, Mami, add it to that last big box? Some ideas from that.
Okay.
And yeah, it definitely, if you have a data scientist point of view and our user point of view, might be really different perceptions on accuracy, also as accurate. What is accurate?
In terms of what needs to be done, there should be a data collection system functions, right? Oh.
Data protection or what did you say?
Data collection, sorry.
Data collection.
Yeah. So what kind of yeah. But I don't know what kind of data.
I'm thinking The main goal here is to avoid wasting time for the caretaker. A solution that overall wastes a lot less time is if the person who's being monitored actually interacts with the app. So if the app thinks there's a problem and it asks the person that's being monitored, is there a problem? Then that interaction takes seconds total rather than actually going out there and checking them or whatever.
Yeah, that's a
So
good
like
point.
feedback
That's
loop
one
there.
way of that's one way of getting your ground truth. Yep.
Yeah, we can have another story about that. Could you, Roy, formulate it? We can help you as a group. So that maybe that comes from the, like, as I want to avoid for bothering my children, for example, or something. I took the liberty to name this story with no wasted time. I think that's also like something like positive way of having control, like as the elderly, for example, elderly person, it would give you freedom when like having your own control also for the system, like giving the feedback, everything is actually okay. Of course, we might have end up in different kind of problems with that, but of course that it also maybe comes to the communication. So
My mother would never tell me she's sick.
Yeah. Especially when there's, on the other hand, there is no wasted time as a counterpart. Yeah.
I'm actually thinking, depending on how old the people we are talking about, some elderly probably will not be able to even use smart devices, no?
That's the point. Yeah.
So they don't probably even realize that they could do something to control the system. This actually goes to probably another question to really, to do this, in order to do this exercise better, maybe it's nice to have 5 minutes to discuss about the product vision or somehow the scope of the targeting customer. So to give a boundary to do the brainstorming for all this exercise.
Yeah. Any other idea for this one? So we had 3 minutes left to reviewing the whole process.
I'm actually thinking on the previous user story, what Grace said, this ground truth, something about it, it's really important, you know, as it's part of this implement this user story, because you have something to measure the accuracy, but you also need something to know if you need to act on this information or not. Right?
Yeah. Is it just the info prompt, or is it something that requires action?
Kind of, evaluation, a kind of evaluation module to know. based on this information, should a person act or not, the caretaker acts or not. So evaluation system, I would say. Oh, I don't know if that's the right term.
Maybe a evaluation model inside the system,
Yeah.
something just to get some parts of the thought.
Yeah, I think that's pretty important.
And maybe this could also come that, like, from communicating to have a good accuracy, you need to understand the boundaries. And I think we wrote something here, like really related to this, is also here, letting in next to card 6, letting them know what the system is capable of doing, what is incapable of doing. So there is no basic understanding of the capabilities. How would you feel that this is really related to that one, or am I just seeing it?
I think it is. Because knowing what it's capable of doing versus what it's incapable of doing helps with that evaluation. At least you can evaluate it to know, okay, this is what it does, this is what it's incapable of doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's definitely related to reliability, no? If the interpretation is evaluation is reliable or not.
Yeah. So any last thoughts? We have 20 seconds before we return to the main room.
Yeah, a quick comment. I actually didn't know how to use the contextual information.
People back here as well. And yeah,
So
we had Mr. Hassan just join us here just a moment ago, and was actually, there's a question maybe Dr. Lewis could answer regarding the mirrored session tomorrow. So how to access it? That's technical detail that I didn't have the knowledge right now. So maybe you could fill me in.
Okay. Yeah, so as soon as we're done here, I take the video and I submit it to the conference organizers. And if you go to the conference program, you're going to see that there are the live sessions, and then like as the live sessions end, I think is at like actually I think this might be the last live session. And so then what happens is that now you can start accessing all of them again. So if you click on that link the same way that you were clicking it right now, you would, instead of going to the Clouder session, it automatically takes you to the recorded session. So you'll be able to access those from the actual program in the same way that you're accessing this. It's just that they're in a different timeline.
thanks.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Let's move forward. Ville, how are we doing?
We came up with a couple of user stories. How about you, Pekka?
I believe that we came up with at least 3, and one is multiple. So I think that it actually looks like 4.
Okay. How about others? Was Erika in one room also?
Erika was helping us.
Okay.
We came up with 2.
Yeah. So as I started with the ECCOLA description, one way of producing actual step for the development would be to produce user stories. But of course, we are producing documentation on discussion. So for example, what things to consider and how. And now we are looking in one way of addressing this issue that we have also been testing out in empirical setting. Could these cards be used as writing user stories, and especially like to the non-functional requirements that are sometimes harder to essentialize or capture. So let's look at a couple of user stories and what did we came up with. I can start with our rooms, Flinga board, and would it be okay for Grace you to describe our first user story with the no wasted time case?
It sounds horrible though. Yeah, so
Okay, I
No,
gave up with the name, so you're no responsibility.
I know what you mean. So the idea behind the user story is that if I'm the caretaker, son or daughter of the person that I am monitoring using this app, I want to make sure that the alerts that I receive are accurate, are detailed, and are also understandable, so that I know exactly what is happening, so that I know that they're safe, even though I'm not with them all the time, but also so that I can evaluate like the seriousness or so I can determine what I need to do as a user. Do I need to run now to the hospital? Do I just need to call this person, or do I need to tell the maybe the place where she or he is living at? But that's the idea, to be able to have enough information so that I can make a decision on what the next step is. And what needs to be done. So obviously we have to have some kind of accuracy measurement or something that is keeping track of that. I would have to have a data collection system online, an evaluation model for the accuracy part, but I also need to have, maybe this is more of an implementation detail, but I would need to have an explainable model, meaning I would need to have some information about what are the decisions that were made by the system, so I can, and that leads to the understandable part.
Yeah, and also we had discussion on like to whom we are presenting the knowledge. So we have different roles might have a different needs for the accuracy or different description for the accuracy. So, but especially we have the caretaker role here. Roy is also on. Would you like to say something about having control user story?
Yeah, so this one was kind of in response to the first one, and basically what it was is the idea that the elderly person also wants to control their information and what their caretaker is being alerted about. So when there actually is a scenario where the system thinks there's an emergency, we thought that it would be good to add a system where for like the first 10, 20 seconds or whatever, the system actually verifies with that user that there is an issue rather than just sending their information out to whoever. And then the ways to implement that would either be some kind of button that they can use or a voice prompt interaction.
So these are our user stories. And we really used a lot of time on discussing on the 4 cards, actually, when to use and what card. And that really was like a starting point for our discussion. So with which card should follow which one in the actual development. And yeah, that was a cornerstone for our discussion. So how about others?
I think that one thing that was maybe Marianna from was room number 2, so maybe we can go then last. So Marianna, go ahead.
Yes. All right. Are you seeing the user stories?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Okay. So we have 2 stories. That we have one that's titled "Going Outside" and another for maintaining personal privacy. So the first one is about if the elderly user actually wants to go outside in a controlled way. If they want to go outside to some designated space. Robert, if you have anything to add, please don't please correct me if I explain this, because this was very much your idea. So if I say something wrong, please correct me. So we are thinking if the patient or customer wants to go to some place where they are allowed to go, but they also need to be safe. So they might need an area, a safe area with sensors and alarms that warn them, warn someone when the patient or customer is getting out of the certain safe area, and possibly some kind of wearable sensors that also might monitor their heart rate or something like that. That would indicate that they might be in a distressing situation or in danger.
I'll only add one thing there, is that the idea is that you have some kind of AI there, that you learn a certain pattern. So you have some area that you know that algorithm kind of walking in, and as the system learn more and more of the behavior, then it can be more and more precise in some sense. So that was the idea behind it, kind of.
May I ask which card you draw inspiration for this, or did the cards even affect your?
Oh, absolutely. It's did, but I don't. It's hard to say exactly which one, but it's a triggering by the card, because a lot of discussion around the card kind of thing, though, and make a lot of comments, and then we coming to this kind of issue.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Then our second story is about maintaining personal privacy. Like, even though we are presumably dealing with patients with some level of like lower level of functioning, with some kind of with Alzheimer's or conditions like that. But it would still be in everybody's best interest if they have a say in their own privacy and how much agency they have over their own life. So of course, as an elderly user, I want to retain as much privacy as possible despite being monitored. Know that I am not being watched by cameras 24/7, so that I can live my life without feeling like someone is watching me. So what needs to be done for this is clear signals that the cameras or sensors are on. We discussed that the system should have sensors and possibly not cameras, because they do invade privacy quite a lot, but at least sensors. And if the cameras are on, there should be some explanation why they are on.
And I want to add to this thing that Harvey was really driven by the card called privacy.
Yes.
So have a direct kind of thing we is coming from this discussion around that card, basically.
Okay, and then we have time for the last room.
I can share the screen. Okay, so we had these two, or actually one theme and then a team, the second story with two themes. So first story title, End Users in Driver's Seat. So as an elderly person, I want to have control over the type of data that I'm sharing, so that I trust that the data that is needed and only that data is used. And what needs to be done when working when the user story can be considered done is to have multiple profiles to choose from. And then the second one, a safe and independent life. Again, as an elderly person, I can get help when needed so that I can feel safe and independent. And the third theme and story title, Machines Needs. So we thought about what about machine learning? So as the machine learning algorithm, I want to provide extremely useful output and or receive useful data from various sources so that I can support various stakeholders. And what needs to be done so that this user story can be considered done is provide behavioral patterns, user profiling, verify that I am, as a machine learning algorithm, working correctly. And our team had some reference to this. Some kind of paper was made about verification. procedures towards machine learning. And this paper inspired us to think about stakeholder machine learning algorithm as a stakeholder. So this is something that we managed to put together from our discussions from the two iterations.
Can I add here, Ville? I mean, we had one trouble when we were working. Well, we had many troubles. We discussed a lot, but the thing was that we felt limited when Imara and myself were talking. That we were limited, so we had ideas about all the other cards as well. So we wanted to give like this. We didn't select. I mean, overall, we didn't select the human oversight card or the area to be addressed, but we talked about human oversight a lot. So we would have felt more comfortable that that we would have been able to comment on the human oversight card and add. And then we had ideas flying here and there, and somehow we felt that we had to always look at, okay, we have to talk about the reliability, but we want to talk about this other stuff. So that was something that we felt that we wanted to share with everyone. Maybe you guys didn't feel this, have this feeling, but this is something that was making us struggle because we felt somewhat limited.
I would like to ask Imara, what's your experience with these cards? Was this the first time? Because this kind of behavior is something that we are seeing from developers using these cards in actual settings for a while. So they start to memorize them cards and okay, I have either regarding that one or yeah, this is really related to that one.
I have a comment there. I mean, I find it a little bit hard at time pressure because you have to learn it and remember the card, and then you have to have discussed at the same time, So I think that if I do the exercise again, of course, then it will be easier because then you have more the card fresh in mind,
Yeah, but Imara had already the mic open, so.
Just how my experience with using these types of cards in general.
Or this kind of like maybe themas would be.
I would say limited.
Yeah, but still you felt that they stuck with you already with.
I like the cards and I like to give me guidelines, and I would like to put them all on the table and then use them and then just keep discussions and then pull up different cards and continue the discussion. And when we go in a certain direction, take that card, write some notes on there, and when the discussion goes in a different direction, take them out as well. So I would like to use them as a guideline, but just only focusing on one card, then certain ideas kind of disappear. Like, oh yeah, we got this great idea, but we can't talk about it right now. So maybe make a scribble note somewhere and then try to remember. And
what we did was we wrote it down, but then we discussed that we have to put it somewhere else later. But of course, I mean, if we would have all the cards there, and I mean, then over time, of course, one would become familiar with all the cards. But at this point, even it's easy to find like, okay, this is about that. Because I don't feel, I mean, we felt that we should not be restricted, Ville, with this kind of a forceful approach. But in any case, so I think that that was what we wanted to raise as an observation.
Yeah, and that is why also we have the physical cards done. Of those, Corona pandemic has shown us we are really not working in a single space or a single group, but feel the physicality of these will like aid to the way that Imara was pointing out. Also, like you can just take things and make notes and just take them up, put them away when you don't need them. Okay, so we have still.
Rogat raised the hand. Let's give a opportunity for him to talk.
I have one issue. I'm in a group now who are working with sustainability. And we can probably come up with equally many cards about sustainability. So where will we ending, I mean, this thing in some sense? I mean, I don't know how many cards you have now, but then we adding twice as many cards about sustainability, and then we adding again, triple it with some other area kind of thing though. And so then it's this thing will be just adding to it. How is scalability? I'm wondering about.
And these are things that we have been also discussing on the research side, especially with governance. For example, like where do we go with governance? With this kind of evolving card, should it be growing with teams, or should we just make them more abstract? But still, we have the goal to be practical also. So I think it's a balancing game.
I mean, we know from the history that there was the 1990s was a huge process overkill. So people were not able to do anything because there were so many processes running around, and then became agile, and then everything went out of the window. So, and in a way, the process was given to people, like people were empowered to work on the. So in this sense, we have to always be careful as researchers that we bring up ideas that are actually practical. So that's why the developers are in are in control. We have observed that. And of course, interviews as well, that not all the developers are aware of all the aspects. They might have heard of it, but then whether they would actually have a way to do something about it, that's another question.
Yeah, but hey, we have 4 minutes remaining. Joni, could you release the last survey for wrapping up the session? And there's a special thing at the end of the survey. It's not long, but if you really like the physical card copies that I just showed, it might be worth going to the end of the survey also.
So we have a draw. So we sent 10 physical card decks to those who want, and I'm counting people here. So I think that.
Yeah, but I'm also seeing that there might be people coming from the mirrored program. So we have the draw open, but your chances are quite high at this moment.
Yes, you're right. We have mirror program as well, so let's see. But please fill the feedback, and we really appreciate the feedback. And we are now then closing the session. And thanks for the team to put this together. It has been really nice, and all the participants for your effort.
And also the organizers. It has been, I would say,
organizers.
Yeah, long trip from planning to submitting to. Getting the feedback and working with the virtual venue.
But also with the flexibility so that we could use the Zoom platform, because it's really something that works quite well, and I'm happy that we were possible to do this like this.
Yeah, and thank you from the ICSI side as well. I know preparing this took a lot of time, so I appreciate the exercise. I learned a lot today. Thank you.
Thank you.